Hello, everyone. Welcome to another episode of Sincerely Agile with Mary. Now, if this is your first time on this is a show where we promote the lean agile mindset. We learn, unlearn, and relearn, and we try and make change agents of ourselves. So if you're here for the first time, please subscribe to our channel, and you're most welcome. Now, today, our topic is leadership and vulnerability. And to join me on the discussion, I've got Kevin here today. And here he is.
Hello, Mary. Hi.
Hello, Kevin. How are you?
I'm good, thank you. It's a nice sunny day here in North London.
And it's nice and sunny here at my end of Kent as well. And it's such a pleasure to have you today.
Thank you. Good to be
Now,
here.
How has it been for you COVID-wise? I mean, a lot has happened. We're all working remotely. How have you been faring?
Pretty well, I think, generally. You know, we settled into working from home initially, and I was working on my kitchen table for a few days, and then that wasn't working out with my wife as well there. So then I set up a desk in my spare room, which has become my office. And I got an extra screen, and so I'm quite comfortable, really. So that's okay, but I really miss the interaction with people. I'm very much a people person. I like the spontaneity of exchanges that you can't really get when it's all programmed, video calls all the time. So I miss that, but otherwise, we've been keeping healthy and well so far, which is good.
Good. What was commuting like for you before COVID, before remote working?
It wasn't too bad, actually. I live about, I could do 45 minutes on the tube, but I also started cycling. So that was good. And I've tried to keep the cycling up, at the weekends and things. So that was quite good. Well,
before COVID, I had to shuttle between Brussels and Kent, essentially. So I would go every weekend. So right now, I'm not missing that commute at all. So I'm enjoying. I am enjoying the remote working thoroughly right now. So let me introduce you to our audience. We have quite a few people here already. I'll introduce you just shortly after we check those who are here. Let us know where you're calling in from. If you're joining us for the first time, if we can just have a reaction, where are you joining us from? We've got Stella da Silva, good evening from Oman. We've got Maximizing Creativity and Potential. Hello, Mary, evening. Oh, that's Femi there. Okay, hello, Femi. How are you? Good evening. Hello, Mike. How are you?
Mike.
Someone from your network?
Yes.
No?
Mike.
Okay.
Hi.
So if you could let us just know where you're calling in from. We've got, from Essex. We've got Kemi from Lagos, Nigeria, all the way from Lagos, Nigeria. Thank you very much for joining us. Now, let me introduce Kevin to our audience. Now, Kevin wrote his first program at the age of 17 to calculate the wages for the staff at his parents' nursing home. After studying business and finance with modern languages at Newcastle upon Tyne Polytechnic, his first job was with the British Aerospace, where he taught employees how to use the internal email system. He has since worked for a variety of companies and has lived in France, Japan, and Malaysia before returning to the UK. He has worked in IT for over 35 years in many different roles, from service desk support to global head of data centers, project managing data center moves in France, to building a shared service center in Malaysia. Kevin, you are welcome to the show.
Thank you. Goodness, I feel very old after all
that. As you can see, he's a well-traveled professional. So, Kevin, our topic today is leadership and vulnerability. Now, for me, I have this quote that I absolutely love, and it says, leadership is about vision and responsibility, not power. And for me, talking about responsibility, the Duke of Edinburgh comes to mind. I know it's sort of not in a professional sense, but we want to use this opportunity to, send our sincere condolences to the Queen the royal family, and the passing of the Duke of Edinburgh. I think he was a servant leader anyway. So
Yeah.
What mentioning, definitely.
Oh, definitely. A sad loss.
Yeah. Now, back to our conversation. It's a VUCA world. It's volatile. It's uncertain. It's complex. It's ambiguous. I mean, this was already the conversation with the complexity of the environment that we have to deal with. Now, adding COVID-19 to that equation makes it even much more a VUCA world, okay? And when you think about the complexity and ambiguity in which we have to operate, you then tend to ask yourself, what kind of a leader do we need in this kind of environments? Because certainly no one knows it all. Even in a team situation, today we're talking about having teams of teams because we are, working towards very complex solutions. So we need each other. So no one leader knows it all. So given all that has happened in the last year, what was business continuity like for you, and how have you showed up differently as a leader, especially with remote working?
Okay, I mean, it's a great question, right? We've all had to go through this. That's what makes it so interesting. I think COVID is, it's a worldwide phenomenon, and we've all had to tackle it differently. I think, in a way, ironically, I've grown to know my team better through this pandemic because we've changed the way we work. We used to have a weekly meeting, a huddle we called it, on Monday mornings, where we'd get together and talk about, what was going on with people, how they were feeling, what the workload was like, and that was quite good. But when we were all working from home, we then switched that to be daily. So 9:30 every day, we all get together. We just have a quick catch up on, what's going on, what we're up to at the weekend. It's not all work. It's a little bit about what's going on in our lives, how people are feeling, who's had a COVID test or vaccine, whatever. And then we talk a little bit about what work, who's doing what, because as you say, we're all dependent on each other, and we're not in the office to be able to know who's doing what. So we have to talk. So communication is key. But we also talk about, how overloaded are people. We sort of give it a score from 1 to 5. If you're 5, then you're absolutely well overloaded. We want people to be sort of around 2, 2.5, 3. So we sort of do that. And then if the number's getting a bit high, we say, well, okay, what can we do to help? Do you need to reprioritize that? And then somebody else might say, well, actually, I haven't got much on. Maybe I can help you. And we work together like that. And also how we're feeling is very key. So, we use funny little GIFs and things to sort of show how you're feeling. The other day, I can't remember, somebody put something on because it was a bright sunny day. So they had this jiffy of somebody opening the curtains and the sun was streaming through, or we have funny images from films or all sorts. And it's a convivial moment of the day, really, to catch up and see what's going on. So that's been definitely something that's good. And because we talk about our lives, and sometimes one of my colleagues has, sorry, my daughter's here needs to print something. I need to go and help her, and things like that happen, right? Yeah. So we've got to know a little bit more about what the home's like, who's in the home, homeschooling's been going on. So yeah, we've got to know each other, I think, more as people and more about the home lives than we did probably pre-COVID, when we would just turn up 9 to 5, go home.
That's it. And I absolutely love the fact that you're talking about getting to know people better. And when we came online, it wasn't just about work. It was also about how are you feeling today? Because these are very difficult times for everybody. And we may take it for granted, but some people live alone. Yes, we may take it for granted that we have a partner, we've got children. Some people actually live alone. And for some, that drive to the office, that going to the office Monday to Friday was what made their life much more rounded, believe it or not. So it is important that, with all of this happening around us, that we are intentional about checking in on people to say, how are you? I mean, it shouldn't all be work. If anything, I actually think people are more productive during this COVID period because, we're putting it more more time, actually. I think
Yes.
we're putting in more time because we're not traveling. I mean, I know for a fact that I come downstairs at 6:30 in the morning with my cup of coffee. Sometimes I'm still in my PJs and I'm already logged on doing one thing or the other. Absolutely. So we are doing a whole lot. Getting to know people better, it is so important. And I also think that this period has helped us to trust one another even more, because I think so. Because I believe that we always had the infrastructure to work from home, but there was the issue of trust and, of course, the mindset. I think now COVID has made a case for us. I know COVID comes with all its complications, but there has been some positives with COVID. More trust, believing that, you know what, when you give people the freedom, they can even do more. When you trust them, they can do more. When you create that enabling environment, they can definitely do more. So thank you very much for that response. And I'm happy to see that you're taking that approach yourself, really leaning more into that personal conversation. Very, very important. Yeah. Now, let's see what our audience are saying. We need to carry them along. We've got, Joy from Austria, I think that is. Hello, Joy. How are you? Stella, I think some leaders have become a bit more, empathetic, yes, because we're all experiencing the same common pandemic. Absolutely. So we can empathize with one another because we're going through the same thing. And a lot of stuff that would normally have been strange seems normal. You said something, Kevin. You said you could be working and your daughter might want to come and, print something. A dog could be barking. It could be anything. Now, I remember an incident on, I think, BBC or Sky TV, I can't remember, where this gentleman was on live television and a toddler strolled in and the mother frantically, and I use the word frantically, came in to get her. That is so normal today now, isn't it?
Yes.
So normal. If anything, let the girl come on, let the child come on and say hello to your colleagues, right?
Exactly. Yeah. And it's humanized us a lot more. And also, I mean, you talk earlier on about wearing your PJs, right? I mean, how many people, who hasn't done a call in their PJs? I think, I certainly have. I don't put the video on if I'm in my PJs, but I think most of us have. And workwear has become a lot less formal now. Nobody's wearing ties and suits anymore, even if it's a fairly professional meeting. A polo shirt or a collar shirt or a t-shirt seems to be fine. So I think that's nice. People can be more relaxed. They can be themselves. And also, back to being, you talk about the commute, etc. They've got the flexibility to work when it suits them. If they want to start at 6:30 in the morning, which I'm guessing you probably couldn't do to commute in and start at 6:30 in the morning, if that's when you're productive, you can do some work then. Maybe you can take some time, take the children to school, take the dog for a walk, do some sport, come back, work some more, and you can organize your work life around your home life, which gives you a much better work-life balance, I find. So absolutely, I think that's been key as well.
So finally, we did get there, because we've been talking about work-life balance for a very long time, which we didn't quite achieve, did we?
No, and it's getting better now. Definitely.
It is. Now, Mike here is saying, what I usually hear from Kevin about teamwork is, it does not matter which company or brand you are, we are stronger together. That's a very good one for you there, Kevin. Really good.
That's very, very kind of Mike. And he's joining from the Philippines, so I don't know what time it is over there, but I really appreciate him joining.
And we have Fumi from Ohio. And Joy says the pandemic had made us all look more inward and appreciate you can say that again,
very
Joy.
Much. Absolutely, yes.
The little things of life, absolutely. I mean, Kevin was telling me earlier, just before we came on, he said, I know my neighbors better now.
Yeah.
I'm my neighbors lucky. Better now.
We live in a small apartment block in the north of London, and there's a common courtyard. All the apartments give onto this common courtyard, and that's become our little social area. So we could go out, we could be socially distant outside, have a drink. My wife's out there now playing badminton with one of the neighbours in the courtyard, and that's been fantastic to have that social connection. And you were saying before, Mary, about people living on their own. I mean, that must be so tough. We've been so lucky to have this here.
Yes, absolutely. Thank you. And Stella says some people have been a lot more productive working from home in any event.
True.
Absolutely. Absolutely. So back to my questions. Now, you have lived and worked in France, Japan, Malaysia. Well traveled you are. Talking about leadership and vulnerability, how does it compare in these cultures, especially vulnerability? How does it compare?
Yeah, I mean, that's a great question. Cultures are, very different. I mean, France is very close to us. It feels very similar. I'm sure most people have been there on holiday to visit, and apart from the language, obviously, it seems very similar. And yet, there is a lot of difference in France. I mean, I'm lucky to speak French. I learned it at school, and that helps a lot. So I think the first key to any country is if you can speak the language, that will definitely help with integration. But it's by no means everything. One thing in France is that when you go into the office every day, you go up to everybody and say hello and you shake the hand. It's very important in France. Whereas in Japan, absolutely not. You don't do that. And going from France to Japan, I was used to coming up and they're like, no, sorry, good morning. If they'd say good morning, that was about it. So there's a lot of differences. Leadership and vulnerability. I mean, I felt vulnerable in a way myself because obviously I was an outsider. And then coming in, I think leadership is, it depends on the people. I don't think it's specifically linked to a culture because you can have people of all sorts of, everybody's different, right? Whether they're in Japan or Malaysia or France or in the UK, everybody's different and you have to treat people as individuals. But you do have to do that through the filter of a culture. Some examples in France, a lot is around family. It's very much about the family, and people will work. They take more holidays. They've got more holidays over there, which is great. They tend to take longer lunches. I know it's very famous. Everybody laughs about the French and their long lunches, and they do take long lunches. I mean, it's not the 3 hour thing that people talk about. It might be an hour, and they might use that time to go home and have a lunch with their family, or just go out and have lunch with a colleague. But this is quality time, and it must be difficult for them now, in many cases, not being able to do that. It's quality time that you spend, and it's where you create a lot of the relationships and the trust you were talking about before that you then build on. And in France and in UK, then when I came back to UK, and people just go out and get a sandwich and eat it at the desk, I found that I missed that interaction that they have in France. And so you have to adapt to the local culture to build the trust that then I think leads to leadership, really.
Yeah. Yeah. But in the sense of leadership, in terms of creating should I say, a safe environment? Because, for example, I know in Japan, they are very, respectful. You sometimes can't even look at their eyes. I think especially if it's someone much older. And
Yes.
I'm thinking in that kind of culture, how easy is it for a leader to be vulnerable if we are in that kind of culture, placing a leader so high up there? You're the one showing the direction, you're the hero, anything you say goes, we follow the leader kind of thing. How easy can it possibly be for a leader in that context to be
It's
vulnerable when everyone's looking up to you?
Yeah, I think it's difficult. I mean, they do have a sort of I don't know how I call it, like a two-speed motorway or something. So in the office, absolutely everything is very formal. It's very hierarchical. It's pressure on the leader to make those decisions, and people will follow. But then there is also, if you want to bounce off ideas and be a bit more vulnerable, what you do is you go out for drinks. Okay, this is absolutely accepted. It's called nomikai, which is this communication over a drink. And you go out and you have drinks, and the Japanese have a sort of a low tolerance for alcohol, so it doesn't take many beers for them to be, quite talkative. And then you can talk things. That's where you build that relationship. But the funny thing is that the next day, in England, you'd go out for a few drinks, you'd come in the next day and you'd say, "Oh, we had a great time last night. It was fun. We should do that again." In Japan, you don't really mention it. It's like what happens in the bar stays in the bar, and you come back in and you're there for 9 o'clock or whatever time you start, and you just get back on with it. But the relationship has been created, and in subtle ways, you will see the fruits of the time you spent in the pub, in the work life. But it takes time and it takes quite a bit of drink. I can say I've had a few evenings where I was struggling to integrate.
That is such an interesting one. Let's see what our audience have to say now. Let's see. Stella says, okay, we have to say hello to everyone here in Oman, and that can take a hot minute, of course.
Yes.
But that's the culture.
Absolutely.
Absolutely. That's the
It's
culture.
very important. Yeah.
And now we know we have to have a glass of alcohol or two to get through to our Japanese counterparts. Now, for someone like me, I'm not an alcohol person, but I guess I can always take something else. Yeah, that's a good one, Stella. And it's so important that we understand these cultures, especially if we're going to be working in these environments. Japanese are just very formal. Yes, they are. I worked for a Japanese company for a few years. They are very, very formal. I mean, I find it interesting that we went for a drink and then we come back, we don't even talk about it. Interesting. Yeah. And then Kemi says, lots of pressure to perform on such a leader. Absolutely.
Yes, absolutely.
Which makes it difficult for them to be vulnerable. But I'm happy to hear that a leader in such a situation can go for a drink and he can be vulnerable. Yes. So there is some...
I've had drinks with the president of our company in Japan, quite a few of the leaders. They've all been out and letting their hair down a little bit.
Yeah.
But then the next day, again, you just don't refer to it, but you've got that relationship then. So
well, at least they have that window of opportunity to speak out, to say, actually, Kevin, I'm struggling with this. Or I'm struggling with that. So at least they have that window of opportunity. Because if they didn't have any window of opportunity to be vulnerable at all, I mean, I can imagine how difficult that can be.
Yeah.
Kevin is a go-to person in the Adecco group.
You're embarrassing me, Mike.
Especially in IT. Kevin is one of the IT leader in the group I admire most. A servant leader. And that's why we have him on the show.
You're fine, right? Thank you.
Well, there you go, Kevin. If it was otherwise, he wouldn't be saying that. So well done to you. Yeah. Well done. Okay. Now, as a lower ranking employee, did you experience bad leadership? Now, I've got like 3 questions in one here. Did you experience bad leadership? If yes, how did that make you feel? And did that feeling help shape the type of leader you became? Now, 3 questions. Take your time.
That's okay. So it's going to be very short because actually I didn't have bad leadership. I was very lucky.
Okay.
All of the managers that I worked with in the different companies that I've been with have, pretty much without exception, have all been very trusting, leading by example, inspiring leaders. And I've worked with for a variety of them, variety of nationalities. And so I think that allowed me to build my trust and hopefully become, take that example and pass it on. I remember when I first became a manager, it was in Eurotunnel. I was a member of a team, and the manager said, "Look, I'd like you to take over the position and lead the team." And I was like, "Are you sure?" I'm not sure. I mean, I'll give it a go if you want, but I want to be, if it doesn't work out, I want to just go back to my other job. And they said, "Yeah, no, I think you're going to do fine." And they believed in me and they gave me that opportunity. And the team who were, at the same level as me, I suddenly became the leader, which was a bit awkward. But because I knew them and I knew what they knew how to do, I would just let them get on with it. I really see the role of a leader as, letting people bring out the best of themselves. We're there to help them, to support them, protect them in some cases from, all the paperwork and the decisions and the bureaucracy, to let them go on and do what they do to the best of their ability. And that's sort of how I try to go, and that's how people have been with me, and so I try and pass it on, really.
Fantastic. And obviously, we heard from Mike, and he said you're the go-to
Yes, it's
leader, you're a
working.
servant leader. And servant leader is what we're looking for, especially when we're talking about, agility and creating a safe environment and all of that. And I've got another question here. Well, you've sort of alluded to this to some extent. Now, as a leader, how important is it to you that employees operate in a safe environment, and how have you demonstrated this intentionally? If you can just elaborate more, because obviously, like I said, Mike only had good things to say about you. But when we talk about, psychological safety, I mean, let me just elaborate on that a little bit. Now, when we talk about, just for the benefit of our audience, when we talk about psychological safety, we're talking about the extent to which employees feel they can take interpersonal risk. How inclusive is the environment? Are they able to challenge the status quo? Do they feel included when decisions are being made? Are they carried along? I mean, just last week, we were talking about diversity and inclusion with Femi Odelusi on the show. These are very, very important topics, because as an organization, you can achieve diversity and not, necessarily be inclusive. You can very easily demonstrate that you're quite a diverse organization, but what happens when decisions have been taken? Are people carried along? So achieving safety is something that doesn't just happen on its own. We have to be intentional about it. So tell us, Kevin, what have you done to ensure that people feel safe, people feel free, people can, take interpersonal risk as a leader?
I mean, I think, again, a lot of it is down to building trust, building relationships, being open, like we were talking about before when we have our daily meetings. People can share anything, but we also have, I have a one-to-one with everybody in my team at different times, and we catch up and talk about not just how's work, but how's things in your personal life. If they want to share, obviously I'm not going to pry, but how's things at home? Do you have what you need? Any difficulties? Anything I can help with? And it's more building that, I think, over the time. I'm trying to think of specific examples now. I've had, unfortunately, one case where it was reported to me that somebody felt not safe due to the action, which I don't think was in any way an intentional thing, but unintentionally made somebody else feel uncomfortable. And in that case, we had to have some conversations and reorganize the way people working so that those two people wouldn't come into contact. It's very rare that I've seen anything like that. Luckily, I think everybody generally gets on very well. But as I was saying to you before we started the conversation, it's a lot harder to do now when we're all at home. When you're in the office, I typically like to walk around a lot and wander around, and you see people and you say, "Oh, hi, how you doing? What's going on?" But you can also see, when you know people, if they look like they're doing well, or if they look worried or stressed or down or whatever. And that's when you can then reach out and say, "Hey, how's it going? Is everything okay? What's going on?" And doing that now is harder. I mean, we do tend to start doing video calls. Not everybody does. Not everybody likes to put the camera on, but at least there you do get some visual cues. And that's why it's even more important to ask those questions, and try and look for any signs that people are doing, something's wrong in the background. So it has to be intentional now. It has to be much more specific. You have to say to people, "Is everything okay?" And trust, that they have. I mean, I always do the one-to-ones with a video camera, so I can see the expressions and see, do they look happy and healthy, or do they look, pale and exhausted? Just things like that. We also, in the company, we have a quarterly anonymous survey that goes out, where people can answer on how things are going, how they feel. Do they feel that they are that we have diversity and do they feel included? Do they feel that they can take part in the decisions that impact them? And they can respond anonymously, but they can also leave comments that I get directly. And I absolutely go through those comments and I reply, even though I don't know who the person is. I can reply and say, oh, well, I'm sorry to hear that, or, can you reach out to me and tell me more so that I can help in this particular case? And generally, from the feedback that I've had so far, I think, it's going fairly well, but there's always more you can do. And I think the key is reaching out to people to let them, not just to say, I'm not happy with this, but giving me some action specifics to say, okay, well, if you did this, I would feel better, and then I can action that, right? And that's the challenge, is getting the specifics out sometimes.
That is fantastic, anonymous feedback, and that way people can really pour out, because knowing fully well that it is anonymous. And another thing is the fact that you are actually acting on those surveys, because a lot of people have this survey fatigue, because they believe, oh, here goes another survey, and not much is done with those, responses. So it's good to know that you actually attend to those surveys. Very important. Stella here is saying, some people are natural leaders, some people learn to be leaders, I feel. That is true. What's your take on this, Kevin? And
did
you learn it? Did you learn it, or did it come naturally to you?
Maybe a bit of both. I'm as any of my brothers and sisters would say, I'm an elder child. I'm the eldest child, so I think that sort of puts you in a bit of a leadership position. I was often accused of bossing around my brothers and sisters when I was younger, so maybe I had a little bit of leadership there. But back to the example, when I was asked to become the manager of a team, I didn't feel at all like I was ready to do that. And I didn't, but it sort of came naturally. And I just applied what I'd seen in the leaders that I'd had, and luckily, as I said, I had good leaders, so I just applied that. But yeah, I think it's a bit of both. I think you can teach people to lead, but they have to have a little bit of the aptitude and the attitude that makes them want to do it. Some people don't want to be leaders. Some people are very happy to be led. I was in a conversation recently about a colleague who's in a bit of a leadership position now, and actually he wants to step down and do a bit less leadership because that's not what he enjoys. He enjoys being hands-on, and that's great. We don't want everybody to be a leader. We need people to, do proper work.
Interesting answer. You talked about the fact that you were lucky, you had good leaders, so you essentially modeled that kind of leadership.
Yeah.
And this is so important when people look up to us. So if it had been bad leadership, God knows what you would have been modeling right now.
Well,
you see what I mean?
Hopefully I might have adjusted, but I don't know.
So it's important that when we're in a role of leadership, that we are getting it right, because people are looking up to us, and people may well think what we're doing is right. And you also talked about sort of like command and control. You said you were, in that, as an elder child, and that you bossed them around. Now, is there a place for that kind of leader? A command and control leader? Is there a place for that kind of leadership?
Yes. I mean, the obvious example that springs to mind is the military, right? I think that, if you're in a war and you have a military objective, you can't sort of say, right, guys, what do you think? How should we do this? You've sort of got to say, right, this is what we've got to do. You've got to do that. You've got to do that. You've got to do that. Go. Medical as well. I don't think you can sort of vote on what's the best way to remove an appendix. It's just, this is the way, do it. I mean, I'm not a medical man, but I would assume that it's very strict. You have to do it that way. So there is definitely areas where that sort of leadership is needed. And again, there are people that will gravitate towards those roles because that's the sort of leadership they like to give or receive. And others will absolutely be anti-leadership. These are the people that go out and become entrepreneurs. They build their own businesses because they don't want to take orders. They want to be the one in charge of their own destiny, and that's fine too. We need everybody, really.
Yeah. So we definitely need different styles of leadership, without a doubt, given a particular context. And you also mentioned followers. Now, in the agile space, we often talk about, ensuring that teams have autonomy so that they can be creative and they can be purposefully engaged and all of that. But what we have also found as, agilists in that space is that because some teams have been so used to being told what to do, they suddenly have this latitude to be free and creative and autonomous, and they're not sure what to do with it. We often encounter that. So it is interesting is that some people don't want to be leaders, and it is true because it does come with a lot of responsibility. So if I'm giving you autonomy, it comes with a lot of responsibility, a whole lot of responsibility. And I think some people feel that.
Yeah. And again, I'm just going to come back to Japan here because I was working with a colleague and he was doing some training in Japan. And there were different groups of people, and one of the leaders of the team was Japanese. And he said, okay, what I want you now to do is go back to your teams and bring back 3 or 4 examples of management or whatever it was. And the others went off, and the Japanese guy came back and said, sorry, is it 3 or is it 4? And he said, well, 3 or 4, it doesn't matter. No, is it 3 or is it 4? Because Japanese, and again, I don't want to generalize, right? There are all sorts of people in Japan, but quite often they are used to having, it very straight, set out very straightforward and direct, and they don't like, or they're not used to that autonomy. If it's 3 or is it 4? Okay, I want to know. I don't want to be wrong. Japan is very much about being precise. The quality of Japan is well known, and you don't get fantastic quality by saying I want a phone that's 3 or 4 inches big. It's either 3 or it's 4, right? So yeah.
Interesting. And Joy is saying to be a good leader and a vulnerable one, you have to have the capacity and ability to treat every single person in your team as they are. In so doing, bringing out the best in them. Absolutely, Joy, because we're all at different places. Yeah. And we're also different. And as a leader, you really need to be able to have that personal, relationship and be able to meet people where they are. What do you have to say to this, Kevin?
Yeah, no, I fully agree. I mean, as we were saying before, everybody's different. Yeah. Whether they're, whether it's to do with culture, ethnicity, background. Again, I've got 1 brother and 2 sisters. All 4 of us are very different, and that we're in the same family, raised by the same parents, in the same part of the world, but we're all different. And that's even more so the case when you have people in a team coming from all different countries, cultures, etc. And you have to treat everybody as an individual.
Absolutely.
And people will need to be guided in different ways. They need, more frequent contact, maybe, or less. Some people need hands-on. Some people just happy to go on and get on with it. So, absolutely.
And openness equals vulnerability and transparency with intent. I like that. It will depend really on how you deliver your message to your peers or subordinates. For some, it may sound negative, but for others, it may sound like asking nicely. I think he's referring to the scenario you painted earlier. And like you said, some people want that direct, precise instruction, so to speak, because like you said, they've been so used to, being told what to do. So giving them that freedom to decide what happens is rather strange, isn't it? Rather strange for them. Okay.
Yeah.
Now, no, that's not the question. Okay, I've asked that. Now, I have a context to my next question. Now, here's the context to my next question. I see you attended Newcastle upon Tyne Polytechnic. Coincidentally, just 2 episodes ago on the show, we highlighted the bias towards university degrees as opposed to HND holders who actually have the real hands-on experience and ready for the workplace. Although the conversation was in the Nigerian context, it will be interesting to hear what you experienced, or rather what your experience was like. Now, given the context I just gave, were you confronted with any form of bias in your professional trajectory as a result?
Again, I'm going to have to say no. I'm sorry. I don't think so.
Okay.
I felt myself.
Mm-hmm.
This was back in the 80s when I was doing I was at Polytechnic, and very much my family were pushing me. You have to get a degree. That's the thing to do. Then you get a good job, and that's how life goes. And I didn't study that hard at my A levels. I'll be honest. Um, and so I didn't do too well. I had to retake them. I scraped some slightly better grades the second time round, and I managed to get this place at Newcastle upon Tyne Polytechnic. And I was absolutely ecstatic to have that opportunity, because I thought that if I didn't get that, I don't know what I was going to do. So I was very lucky to go in, and I think retrospectively, if I had to choose, I mean, I wouldn't say I would still do badly at my A levels, but even with good A level grades, I think I would still do that course, because it really was the best course, I think, for me. It gave me a good grounding in management techniques. We learned about law, we learned about finance. It was very much done in a practical way. We had case studies all the time. We were writing reports, studying different cases. The language side was all done in French and Spanish, which again came in very useful for me living in France later on. So it was really practical. And when I started my first job, I didn't at all feel at a disadvantage. I actually felt like I probably had an advantage over people. And again, I'm not going to criticize people with degrees.
Mm-hmm.
I'm sure it's a lot better now than it was. And having a degree is proof, not necessarily that you can do something, but that you can achieve something. You can learn, you can follow a syllabus, you're disciplined, you've got the attitude to get to the end of it. And those are all important qualities. And for me, I really do prize attitude and aptitude over qualifications. And I've been lucky, as I say. And once you get that first job,
Yeah.
I believe that then, from then on, I don't think it matters now. Maybe these days it's a lot harder, right? There's a lot of people out there with degrees who are unable to get jobs. And so now there's this pressure. You don't just need a degree, you need an MBA or whatever it is you need. It's insane, the pressure out there. I think
It
if I
is.
was going back, I would say, yes, try and do something practical. I think apprenticeships are brilliant, because it gives you the opportunity to study and get practical experience. Anything like that gives you an internship is absolutely the way to go. The sooner you can start getting practical work experience, in my view, the better, really.
And that was the conversation we had, that people there actually had more hands-on experience, and they were more ready for the work. Now, what would you do to promote a more practical education if you had a chance?
Okay, am I now Minister of Education or something?
Yes, you are, temporarily.
Fine, okay. I'm not an expert in the education system, but I have seen a few TED Talks. There's a guy called Sir Ken Robinson who has done some amazing TED Talks about education. And rather than me come up with any new ideas, I would sort of definitely go back to following what he was doing. He says that schools, and again, right, schools now, I think, are better than the schools when I was at school, because I see my nephews and nieces much more engaged I think the teachers are a lot better at engaging the children and, letting them do a variety of subjects. But originally, schools were doing basically pushing results. So I went to a grammar school. We got put into streams. You got the A stream, which was supposedly the clever people who all got to do maths and the sciences and all that. You got the B stream, who was sort of more middle of the road. And then the C stream were sort of the people that got the worst teachers, and nobody really cared, because they were all focusing on this A stream because they wanted to get lots of good results here. They wanted those people to go to universities, and that would add to the prestige of the school. But the school prestige is not the reason that a school is there. The school is there to educate people, and they should be educating everybody. And if people aren't specifically gifted in maths, then it's up to the teachers to find out what they are gifted in, because everybody is gifted in something, and to engage them and help them find a path along that, whatever it is they're interested in, whether that be engineering or plumbing or computing or dancing or painting or whatever. Everybody is gifted for something, but the school system tends to sort of push everybody into this sort of cookie cutter thing where you have to be like this. And it's people are different.
Mm-hmm. And I ask because I'm trying to link this to our ability to be vulnerable. Because if from earlier on we are being boxed into, oh, you're not good enough or you're good enough, I mean, by the time you get to, that leadership position, there's a high chance that it's going to be difficult for you to be vulnerable because you probably want to prove to yourself that you know it all. What do you think? This is my thinking. Because you're coming from a place where you've already been compartmentalized, so to speak. Oh, these people in this stream are better than you, so to
Yeah,
speak.
I think it does a lot for your self-confidence, right? Because
Mhm.
you have to be confident in yourself to be vulnerable, right? That's my view. If I wasn't confident, then I
Mhm.
wouldn't allow my vulnerability to show
Yeah.
because I'd see that as a sign of weakness, and then I'd be
Mhm.
like kicked out or whatever. Um, and I think the school system, as we just talked about, doesn't help people because it tells them, these C stream people, you weren't good. We're all pushing on the A stream. The A stream, you're the good guys. And so those people in that C stream are then, losing confidence in themselves.
Mhm.
And then when they
Absolutely.
go on, it's going to be hard, even if they are successful in something, it will probably be hard for them to show maybe vulnerability because they don't want to be seen as being, the weak guys again.
Exactly. Absolutely. Which is the reason I brought it up, actually.
Mm.
So, well, we're coming close to the end of the show. Let's see if
Oh,
we
wow.
have any more questions. Any more questions from how does a leader handle followers who will readily abuse the vulnerability of the leader? That's a good one.
Goodness.
That's a good
Okay.
one.
Yeah, I think that's a very good question. I hope I haven't had the case, or I haven't noticed if I have. Yeah, I think again you just have to adjust to the different people, and if you feel that somebody is taking advantage, then you have to set limits. It's all about give and take. A work relationship, like any relationship, you have to. I'm waffling here. Honestly, it's a very difficult question to answer.
Yeah, but it does happen, Kevin. It does
Yeah.
happen. And this is the reason why some leaders might find it difficult or resist being vulnerable because they are scared of being seen as weak. And for the most part, people might associate being vulnerable with weakness, which is not necessarily the case.
Yeah, no, it's definitely not the case. I mean,
Yeah.
I think that you have to show that you don't have all the answers, you are
Yeah.
vulnerable, but there are some times. I mean, I've had to do it. Luckily, not many times in my life where somebody's been pushing back, and I've had to say, look, I'm sorry. I know you don't agree, but I'm telling you to do this, and I'm your manager. I think I must have said it 3 times in my life, hopefully, because I'd much rather get people engaged, whether it be through vulnerability or whatever, and get them involved in what we're trying to do. But if push comes to shove, and I have to say, I'm sorry, no, we've got to do it this way. I appreciate your arguments. I know you don't agree, but we got to do it.
And there's nothing wrong with that. And there's nothing wrong with that because we did talk about different types of leadership earlier on.
Exactly.
It does have its place. At some point, as a leader, it's like you're in a meeting and you can't get to a consensus, and we really need to take action. At some point, somebody has to take that position to say, okay, this is where we're headed, and of course, take responsibility for that. So without a doubt, but for sure, people might want to take advantage of leadership vulnerability. And like you said, it's about setting the boundaries. I am willing to be vulnerable because I know as a leader, I do not have all the answers, especially when we're talking about the kind of environment in which we have to operate today. It's very, it's a VUCA world. It's just not possible for one person to know it all. So it is important that we have that attribute and that we're able to be vulnerable. But when anyone decides to take advantage, then we need to, know where to draw the line.
You have to set the boundaries.
We have to set the boundaries, and we should be able to do that comfortably. I think, let's see. Okay, unfortunately, even in today's education, you still have some school system giving the best teacher. Yes, the A-class student, very bad practice, if you ask me. Absolutely. What does that do to our children's confidence? And these are the leaders of tomorrow, right? It doesn't do much for them at all. And Ronke says, real difficult question, Maiwa, yes, but I think a conversation needs to take place to explain why you are showing vulnerability and take it from there. Yeah, that's one way of doing it.
Yeah.
Educate people to say, hey, just because I'm being vulnerable doesn't mean I'm weak. I'm actually trying to create a safe environment here, and also showing that I don't have all the answers. So yeah, having a conversation, taking that opportunity to teach or to coach, whatever the case may be. Absolutely. That's a very good one, Ronke. I really do like that. Any more questions? I don't think so.
Talking about vulnerability, I must say that it was, I mentioned it in LinkedIn. I was quite nervous and feel quite vulnerable doing this whole webcast because I've never done anything like this before, and it's live, and and it's a first for me. So thank you, Mary, for making it very very easy. It's been lovely. Thank you.
And you've done a fantastic job, Kevin. Thank you very much. And thank you for coming to the show as well. You've given your time. You've given your 1 hour today. So that's very good. And we appreciate you. And you've done a fantastic
It's a real pleasure. It's been
Thank
a
you
real
so
pleasure.
much. If you're joining us for the first time, please subscribe to our channel, Sincerely Agile with Mary on YouTube. And this is where should I say, pull the curtain, as it were. A big thank you to our audience for showing up. I can see there are a few people from your network, Kevin.
Thank you, everybody,
for being here to support him. And we will be back again next Sunday, same time, same place. Thank you all very much. And Kevin, I cannot thank you enough for investing your time with us.
It's been a pleasure. Thank you so much, Mary. Thanks, everybody, for tuning in.
Bye-bye, everybody. Thank you. Bye.